Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural episode of The Bitter Pill. I decided to start this channel because I'm a social psychologist as well as being an activist for about 40 years now on a lot of different issues ranging from opposition to war, to women's rights, civil liberties, environmental issues, animal rights, and the list goes on and on. So I really feel like I have a unique perspective on the struggle for justice and something valuable to contribute. And in a way, the inspiration for this channel comes partly from the so-called red pill that some of you may be familiar with from the movie The Matrix. But that's kind of an overused metaphor. So I chose a name related to the story of my wonderful dog that I lost a couple of years ago. And Red, just out of the blue, we found out one day that he had incurable abdominal cancer. And, and he was in a lot of pain. So he could barely eat, especially when he was in pain, if he was going to eat at all. He had to have his pain medication. But it was very bitter, and he really hated taking it. And that's kind of the way the world is. That the realities of our world is there are all these bitter pills that we really would rather not take. We just don't want to hear about it. And not only that, but the corporate media it really does its best to keep us from finding out about them. But just in this inaugural episode, I want to summarize some of those bitter pills of truth that we're going to explore in future episodes of The Bitter Pill. So one of them is global climate change not only is a real phenomenon, overwhelming scientific consensus that it's a real thing, and also there's an overwhelming scientific consensus that it's primarily human-made. And it's a really severe problem. There was a report that came out last year that spoke of threat to human civilization if we left it unchecked. Now, there's a lot that we can do to limit the damage, but the damage, it's already happening, and it's only going to get worse no matter what we do. Even though there are important things we can do that hopefully can prevent it from wiping us out. And speaking of wiping us out, a second bitter pill that we need to swallow, but maybe don't want to swallow, is that there are a number of nations around the world that have enough nuclear weapons to wipe us all out in a matter of minutes, really. And unfortunately, here in the United States, where I live, our government likes to push other countries' buttons. That's a very euphemistic way of describing what our government does. They go around the world trying to overthrow other countries' governments and steal their oil or their resources, things of that nature. Many of these countries are allies of countries that have lots of nuclear weapons. So it's a very dangerous game we're playing. Or, well, I don't like to say we, our government is playing. A third bitter pill is that America has, a lot of folks call this country, was never great, contrary to what a lot of politicians may tell you. Now, before you accuse me of being unpatriotic and tell me to go live in Russia or something, there are a lot of great things about the USA. One great thing about it is that a lot of people have struggled courageously throughout our history for various social gains, like freedom from slavery and more rights for women, women's suffrage, and so forth. labor rights like the minimum wage and 40-hour work week instead of 70 or 80, and so on and so forth. Many victories have been won through mass struggle throughout the history of the United States. Um, and there are all sorts of other wonderful things about this country. We've created a lot of wonderful music and artwork, and geographically, it's a very beautiful country. And there are a lot of great people, but unfortunately, there have been large amounts of suffering and misery throughout U.S. history. That's been a constant in American life. Let's see, what are we up to now? Number four, bitter pill number four. At present rates of fishing, the world's oceans will be devoid of fish within about 30 years. By about 2050, it's been estimated, thanks to large commercial trawlers that essentially clear cut the ocean and all the excuse me, all the pollution, and we're killing the oceans, just wiping life out in our oceans. Bitter pill number five. Shockingly, schools in the United States are just as segregated as they were back in the 50s when Brown versus Board of Education was passed in the U.S. Supreme Court, legally desegregating the schools. Neighborhoods are also very segregated. We've got a big segregation problem in this country still, almost 60 years after the heyday of the civil rights movement. Bitter pill number six. Things that don't exist include unicorns, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and humane meat. It's not just factory farms that are cruel to animals. It's every farm that raises animals because, of course, in the end, they all die. They're all killed for food. And there's no humane way to kill an animal who doesn't want to die. And there are lots of things that are legal to do to animals who are property that we would never do to a human or even our dog or a cat. But even on so-called humane farms, it's legal to do these things to animals, such as mutilating them in various ways, branding them, or cutting off their tail, or punching a hole in their ear to put a tag in, and so forth, without any anesthesia, and there are many other examples. Bitter pill number seven. Slavery abolitionist Frederick Douglass once said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." So what he's saying is, we're not going to win justice by getting on our knees and begging for it, or sweet-talking those with power and persuading them to grant us whatever it is we're advocating for. We've got to stand on our feet and fight, not get on our knees and beg. Now, when I say fight, that fight doesn't have to be violent, and in fact, in most cases, it's important to be nonviolent and rely on power in numbers and the power of disrupting business as usual, basically. Because, granted, there's a very important role for persuasion and discussion to play in advancing social justice, but passive tactics by themselves cannot win. Direct action that disrupts the status quo is the most powerful tactic that we have in fighting for social justice. Far more powerful, in fact, than voting. Not that voting doesn't matter, but other things matter more. So, to summarize, as political scientist Sidney Tarrow has put it, because disruption spreads uncertainty and gives weak actors leverage against powerful opponents, it is the strongest weapon of social movements. I guess the reason I say this is a bitter pill is that it isn't necessarily what people want to hear. That social change is a messy process that results in disruption. It could result in suffering or loss of life, people going to jail, etc. Bitter pill number 8. The U.S. National Anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, was written by a slave owner who hated black people. Now, I didn't find this out myself until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but if you actually look at the other verses of the Star Spangled Banner, the ones that we never sing, we just sing this first verse. Those other verses make it very clear that Francis Scott Key was very sympathetic to slavery. In fact, he owned slaves himself. Bitter pill number 9. If politicians from both major parties and talking heads from all the different factions of the corporate media and the intelligence agencies are all saying the same thing, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're lying to you. Weapons of mass destruction. Oh my gosh, they've got these weapons of mass destruction that are going to wipe us all out. So we've got to invade. We were lied to, and that's one of many, many examples. Bitter pill number 10, and this is sort of a multifaceted one. Racism is clearly one of the factors that drove Trump's election in 2016. You often hear that, and there's some truth to it. Most of the people who held racist attitudes in this country did not vote for the Democrat. But think about this. Was the U.S. any less racist in 2012 and 2008 when we elected a black president than in 2016? Well, of course not. So clearly there were other factors in Donald Trump's rise to power, such as voter suppression by the Republican Party. They suppressed over 1 million predominantly minority votes. And Trump actually successfully pretended to be an anti-war candidate, at least compared to Hillary Clinton. He presented himself that way, and there are studies that indicate that played a role in his victory. It was a factor. Bitter pill number 11. Following up on number 10, I guess. The world's full of authoritarian and politically reactionary leaders like Donald Trump, Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil, what's his name, Erdogan in Turkey, the Saudi Arabian princes, and so forth. These people are just horrible, enemies of the people in every way. But here in the United States, you often hear the slogan, vote blue no matter who, from sort of mainstream members of the Democratic Party. Blue being this official color of the Democratic Party. So no matter who we nominate, they tell us you have to vote for him because we have to get rid of Trump. But replacing a warmongering corporate shill who's an asshole like Donald Trump with yet another nice warmongering corporate shill like Barack Obama was still leaves us with a leader who is a deadly threat to peace and prosperity and the planet. Because we didn't wind up with Donald Trump in the first place because things were great before. The neoliberalism of the last 30 to 40 years, no matter whether there was a Democrat or Republican sitting in the White House or the Democrats or Republicans controlled Congress, that led to a lot of dissatisfaction, thus a lot of non-voting, a lot of people saying, well, what the fuck, and flipping the lever for Donald Trump. Point number 12, bitter pill number 12. Capitalism is fundamentally hostile to both social justice and environmental sanity, as well as to peace. And we've got to get rid of it. We have to replace the political and economic system that we have with a genuinely democratic political and economic system. A government of, by, and for the people. Now you can call that whatever you like. I call myself a socialist or a communist. I call such a system socialism. But the important point is that we live in a society, and there are other types of societies, such as the former Soviet Union and so on and so forth, where a small cabal of people basically held the reins of power, controlled uh, the political and economic life of society, and things were or are therefore bad. So we've got to change that. We've got to have a system where working people, the 99%, so to speak, uh, control the means of production, the assets that we use to produce goods and services or to finance the production of goods and services. Bitter pill number 13. The corporate media, and unfortunately sometimes even independent media, in cases where the tentacles of the rich and powerful, like billionaire Pierre Omidyar, who owns a number of supposedly progressive media outlets, where their tentacles manage to reach their way in, they're going to exert a lot of influence on how the media presents the world to us. And so these media are going to go to great lengths to prevent us from swallowing these bitter pills of truth, or to deny that they are truths. To say that those who try to get people to swallow bitter pills are crazy, they're Kremlin agents, and the things they say, such as the U.S. is trying to overthrow the Syrian government for its own ends. It's not because Syria has a bad government, even though in a lot of ways it does. But the U.S. is doing this for selfish reasons. We're told that's a Kremlin talking point, Russian talking point. We're Putin puppets if we say these things. Now, to end on a positive note, not all pills are bitter. There are many truths that are maybe surprising, but nonetheless are very positive and hopeful. And one of these is the power of kindness and empathy. Solidarity is a really powerful weapon in the hands of we, the 99%, who, in one or more ways, are among the oppressed in this world. The spirit of aloha, as they say in Hawaii, of basic respect and caring for each other, goes a long way toward building the unity that we have to have if we're going to build a movement powerful enough to right the wrongs in this world. So these are just a few of the truths that it's the aim of this channel, The Bitter Pill, to share with as much of the world as possible. However many or few people watch this channel. It's often said, without justice, there will be no peace. There was a reggae song that basically went like that: no justice, no peace. But it's also the case that without truth, there can be no justice. As Malcolm X said, I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. All right, see you next time.